Hi guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to No Limits, a Mitch podcast. How you doing today, Mike?
Good. I've been enjoying this virtual tour that Kyle's on. I feel like he's got to have his vocal cords ready this week. He's been on radio during the day, tour at night, sometimes 2 events a night. So that's been a lot of fun. How about you? Did you get to tune into any of them?
Yeah, I did. I was glad to see that he got his, his audio was working great during the Brad Thor at the Poison Pen Facebook Live event. He got his headphones because he mentioned he hadn't done the headphones yet. Seems like his wife Kim also follows me on Instagram, so follows us, not me. And
Follows the podcast.
Follows the podcast. There we go. And they've been having fun signing books, going on these Facebook Live events. I really like that the Brad Thor, Kyle Mills. You were able to watch that too, right?
Yeah, that was good. And they resurrected the talk about the crossover, a possible short story. Scott Harvath, Mitch Rapp, and if the two of them can get together and pull that off, that's going to be something. That would be really nice. I was happy to hear that Brad brought that up because I know Kyle talked to us about that and was wondering if that will ever take shape. And so if Brad's talking about it, Kyle's talking about it, maybe something will pan out here.
Yeah, so
we'll see. Tim Flynn last night was good.
I know.
Vince's brother. Nice. The one takeaway from that event was Kyle better not dare putting Mitch in a ponytail or a man bun.
No man bun. No man bun fun for Mitch Rapp. That was funny.
He was pretty adamant, and Kyle's like, but Mitch has long hair sometimes, he grows it out. And Tim's like, no ponytails.
Yeah. Yeah, so we got a couple more coming out. I'm excited to look at those. And this has just been a fun time. Finally you seeing so many people reading Total Power, posting about it. Publication day. We dropped our episode and put all the stuff out on social media. So many people. So it's nice to finally, this is out in the public. And now I got a recommendation on my Audible or you might want to buy this audiobook. It's a top seller, Total Power. Like,
tell me more. What's it about? I'll buy it. Do they have any podcasts to follow up once I'm done reading?
Exactly.
Well, you know who is reading Total Power and listening to this podcast? John M., our newest patron. So we want to welcome John. Thank you. Without your support and the support of all our patrons, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. And remember, this month in September, we're doing a special book giveaway for our patrons. So if in the next week or so you still want to join on, pitch in and help support the show, in addition to sending you a Mitch Rapp Pod sticker and bookmark, we will also put your name into an entry for a giveaway. So here are the autographed books that we have, and the winner gets to choose. So September's winner can choose Executive Power, Extreme Measures, Pursuit of Honor, Act of Treason, Protect and Defend, or the Kyle Mills special, his first Mitch Rapp book ever, The Survivor. And all of those are signed by the authors, and we'll mail one out to the winner of our Patreon contest. So we're going to pick that name by next week's episode, September 28th. So be sure to jump onto Patreon if you are interested. And thanks again to all our existing patrons.
Yes.
What are we covering on today's episode, Chris?
All right. So we're excited to continue our journey through discussing Total Power. Last week, we discussed the first part of Total Power from chapters 1 through 20, all the way up until the attack and the loss of power. And so today we're going to be finishing up the book. We're going to do our wrap up with a couple rapid fire questions, do our zero sum game, and I'm going to give you our final rating. And so just to give a brief, summary of the first 20 chapters and what we talked about. Last time we ended with the culmination of the attack on the power grid being accomplished. Rapp is pretty much stunned as he's taking out a man who was supposed to be helping accomplish this attack. And our buddy, I don't know if you want to call him buddy, but our buddy PowerStation, John Alton, enjoys the spoils of his attack atop that mountain in Virginia. Right. So diving right in to chapter 21 through the rest of the book, I just wanted to, last time we really hit home this theme of loss of control. And that definitely continues here, but I feel like it sort of switches its perspective in terms of the loss of control was really focused on our man, Mitch Rapp, and the whole establishment, right? And now it's going to slowly slip into the loss of control of our villain. And that's really what's going to, take over. But also this new theme that I feel like also really plays a prominent role in the second half of this book is, you sort of brought this to my notion, and I agree with you, is this idea of know thy enemy, right? So we're really going to try to focus, Rapp is really going to try to focus on trying to understand who his enemy is. And he won't even really understand who his enemy is until the very end. Like he sort of has an idea of who John Alton is, and he has to make a gut decision to call someone's bluff. We'll talk about that in depth, but yeah, this idea of really a long slog of understanding, because most of the time Rapp knows, he understands, I guess he knows who ISIS is, right? He has a clear distinction of who ISIS is and like understands their motivations, but really trying to understand PowerStation or John Alton, this is sort of a new realm for him, I feel like. It's interesting to think about the villains who have Mitch has sort of taken down. Some of them that come to mind are like, a lot of them are politicians, obviously. And also Rapp knows who those people are, right? But one of the other ones that comes to mind, who I guess Rapp didn't really understand that well, was the villain from The Last Man, and also the villain in The Survivor, Joe Rickman. And Alton kind of reminds me of him. Do you see that comparison? Could you understand that comparison?
I could definitely see that. They were both experts in their field,
Right.
Cream of the crop. And they both had extraordinary and vast amounts of knowledge in their field. And so I hadn't thought of that. But total power is kind of like, how The Last Man and The Survivor, Rickman's field is the Afghanistan theater of war. And
Right.
here, PowerStation is the analog of Rickman, who's mastered the grid, who knows the ins and outs, who can pull strings with different power companies. And he's kind of that in America. So that's interesting. I hadn't thought about how similar this book is to The Last Man and The Survivor, because they were kind of a pair, two peas of the same pod. But I never thought Total Power would compare that much because the setting is so different. But yeah, now that I think of it, the know thy enemy and loss of control themes really play well in both those stories and in this one. So yeah, I could see that.
And just like a lot of times the villain is a known quantity, whether it's ISIS or the Taliban or Al Qaeda or some sort of terrorist, right? Or the secondary terrorist in politicians. But here we get a clear cut, just a little bit different enemy than normal.
Yeah, and on the theme know thy enemy, it's kind of crazy because they actually call, Irene and Mitch at the meeting call in PowerStation, and he comes with Janice Crane from the Department of Energy to debrief them on what's going on and how we might stop this attack or how we might undo this attack. And they're relying on him. And so it's kind of like a double agent, but in a villain sense. And but although that's part of the loss of control, because it puts PowerStation's plan into motion. Yeah, he has to execute it in the winter time, which is not ideal if you want maximum destruction and carnage. So that's just part of the loss of control. And that's also in the back of their minds probably going to play a role eventually when Sonia is able to provide intelligence that links PowerStation to these attacks. That's going to help Mitch and Irene unravel the string of events and help know thy enemy even more, because they have PowerStation and his history. They have his reports that he's done to Congress. They debriefed him, and so they can go back to those conversations and kind of unravel things in their mind once they know he's the big bad.
A cool technique that I was thinking about that I don't know, I love this book, but one thing that I thought could have taken it to another level, made it even better. Not that I should give critiques to great writers. What if you, and I'm just taking this from other, literature that I've read, but what if we never knew that John Alton was Power Station until the end, right? You could introduce both characters, but never, only use Power Station when he's dealing with the ISIS or with Sonya or whatever, and then you also introduce this character of John Alton who's with Janice Crane, and then there's like this big reveal at the end. Or was that just too much of a big reveal? I don't know. I was just thinking about that.
I think that's genius, and I think it could work. I wonder if it would have made things too messy, if it would have had too many loose ends, and you want the reader at some point to be in the dark, wondering just like Rapp and crew what's going on, and not being able to see the big picture. So yeah, I feel like that could work. Like the airplane scene, right? Kyle gives us a little bit of that where we don't exactly know what's going on. Yeah. And so there is that payoff once we find out what the heck is this airplane scene about? Oh, it was a mission. If you do that over the course of the book with the main plot and the main villain and the main character and create that vagueness, you might lose some readers. It could be gripping with the payoff, but is it worth plotting through the book if you're confused? So right. I don't know. And then the other thing is it very Flynnian to do that? I feel like Vince,
probably not.
He always showed us the big bad, as we've called them, or that politician pulling strings, so that we can nail them in the end, so that we could watch Rapp punch their lights out eventually. He always gave us the inside of their operations and flip-flop the chapters back and forth. So I think it could be a really strong device. I'm glad Kyle didn't go that route. He could have. He let us know right up front that Power Station, or dropped a whole lot of hints and breadcrumbs that Power Station was the same guy as the one at the hearings, John Alton. Yeah, we know that off the bat, essentially.
I think he says at one point, like, they don't know what's going to hit him with what I'm about to do, or something like that. So it's like the last line of like chapter 5 or 6 or whatever. I don't know, but anyways,
maybe that could work as like a TV show, and it's like, well, and I think like in the shadows, you never really see his face, kind of thing. And then boom.
I think if you did this as a movie or a TV show, you'd prefer to do something like that.
You'd want to do that, yeah.
But also have the character of John Alton there, and he's just this jovial, or not jovial, but, he's just this know-it-all guy sitting in a room.
Well, here's the other thing, right? If they were going to use him and bring him in on all the conversations, they would have wanted him at the complex, right? They would have wanted him at what we're going to talk about soon, Seneca Rocks, to be that expert in with the FBI and in with the CIA working on this.
Yeah.
And so how do you write a story with him there the whole time? He wouldn't have been able to carry out the plot and be doing what he's doing with ISIS. So there are some pitfalls. It could have been a really exciting plot device.
It was just something I was thinking about. So
yeah, I think ultimately though it's not very Flynnian.
No, you're right. You're right, and that's why it wasn't done.
Yeah, but let's get to the story.
I like that, Flynnian.
Flynnian, it's very Flynnian.
We should trademark that.
Yeah, so the story picks up with Rapp shortly after the attack. He has one of the terrorists, the one he wrestled and prevented from attacking the substation, in his truck, and he's torturing him using natural methods by leaving him out in the cold as he drives. Warm him up, bring him into the truck, put the heat on, and just as the guy is thawing out, he says, "You're not giving me enough information. Back in the back you go, and let's start driving." And so he puts him back in the freezing cold. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I think of like thawing out a steak on my counter. It shocks the steak and ruins the meat if you, thaw it too much or not enough. And then you put it on heat while it's still too cold. Well, he's doing that to a human.
I don't know. Like, I was just thinking about this, and, up here in Ithaca, it gets pretty cold during the winter. And sometimes I'll go out for like a crazy run. And then I have really bad circulation in my hands. And so when I come back, even I wear gloves, I do whatever, but when I come back, my hands will be really cold, and then I'll go to like wash them.
Ooh.
And the excruciating pain that I get or like, or going to take a shower or whatever. And I was just thinking about, oh my God, that's so brutal what he's doing to this guy. But yeah, I could feel the pain, like I can't understand the pain visceral. Of waterboarding, but I could understand this pain.
Yeah.
This guy was going, like, a little bit of this pain,
Can you understand having your balls sawed off by a plastic spoon on an airplane?
No, I can't.
Yeah, I don't know
do.
much about that one either.
Can't say I do.
All right.
I hope I never. I hope I never.
Yeah, I'm gonna hope you never. Also, being your friend. All right, we see Sonia though. We've already introduced you to Sonia, who was the sleeper agent, woken up. She has made contact with PowerStation. She has seen him. She knows him, and she also knows the Russian government has this information. She turned it over to them. And she's slowly realizing what happened when the power goes out in her DC home. And so for a few chapters, we're going to see her contemplating this idea of turning over the information to the FBI. Essentially, one of the themes I thought about picking was just do the right thing. Sonia really embodies that. And I'm happy in a few chapters here, we're going to see Scott Coleman, Mitch, and the team embrace her, realizing she's trying to do the right thing, even if she was a trained Russian agent. So that's going to lead to some fun down the road.
Yeah. Now let's get to the bunker scene. The first bunker, I guess this is the first bunker scene, yeah?
I think so, yeah.
And Mitch pulls up to one of the entrances that's not guarded, and you just need like a phone or something.
Or a key
you
card.
need something a key card to get in. And he sees someone there who has his car packed to the max, wearing, I think he might have said that he was wearing loafers or something like that, out of place. And it's a congressman. And it's the same congressman who Mitch, after watching, preparing for this attack, was watching some of these hearings talking about the power grid. And it's one of the congressmen who was like, yeah, we're not paying for shit. And, he's like, this is irony to the max.
Yep.
And what does he do, Mike?
I mean, this congressman is standing out there in the cold. He's freaking out, wants to get into the bunker. And Mitch tells him, no can do. He opens the gate. And as the congressman wants to get in, he says, I deserve a spot in there. I belong to the U.S. government. Mitch knocks his ass out. So no better way to get going on this podcast than Mitch punching a bitch-ass congressman, square in the face and leaving him in the cold. And Mitch drives in, gate closes behind him, and there's the congressman bleeding from the face down in the snow. Love it.
Tells him to go be with your constituency.
That's it. Go back to your constituents. Take care of them. Don't hide out in a bunker. Yeah. Although, so this bunker, well, by the way, Rapp has the terrorist, and before he gets in, it's kind of a funny exchange. Rapp has the credentials, but one of the security guards at the next layer of gates is like, hey, sorry, Mitch, you only have credentials for one. Can't let this other guy in. Meanwhile, he's hogtied up in the back of the truck, freezing his ass off. So Mitch cuts him a deal. You can come in with me, and I'll turn you over, which will lead to a life of, solitary confinement and torture with the CIA, because they're going to want your information. Or you can just help me out right now. I'll put a bullet in your head. You get the easy way out. Well, terrorist takes the deal. He opens his phone, unlocks it for Mitch. Once Mitch has the password and the phone is unlocked so they could see who he planned the attack with or who his contacts were with ISIS, there it is. One of Rapp's many kills in the back of a truck.
Open the gate.
Open the gate.
Yeah, so this Seneca Rocks bunker was, just trying to picture it in my mind was really interesting to think about. And we've seen it before, right?
Yeah, so I can't help but think this was based on a real-life bunker that we've had in operation since the 1970s. It's in Bluemont, Virginia, and this one, Seneca Rocks, is in Seneca Rocks, West Virginia, not too far west of the real one. But in Bluemont, they have Mount Weather. And this thing, I looked into it just a little, but I want to do some more research. Massive, massive complex, 564 acres. It's the official National Emergency Operations Center alternative site for the Department of Homeland Security. So if there ever is a major issue where they have to evacuate D.C., this becomes the bunker for top government officials. It's basically inside a mountain. They can fit 2,000 of the government's officials. There's working space for every major federal agency and the White House to be completely up and running out of this bunker. And what's crazy is Vince used that bunker, Mount Weather, in Memorial Day. You remember the nuke, Chris? Well, we don't want to spoil too much, but there's a major scene, basically the conclusion of Memorial Day. It's really one of the best crescendos in any Vince book of, a climax. Mount Weather, the real live one, is where Mitch saves the day. Just going to leave it at that. Nukes,
Right.
planes,
That
and
was
Mitch
really
saving
good.
the day. So, yeah. I can't but help and think Kyle based the Seneca Rocks bunker on the real world Mount Weather. I mean, it just had such a close relation. You know, there's actually an agreement with the National Gallery of Art, like I said, every federal agency, that they would relocate certain valuable pieces of artwork to Mount Weather. So they've got enough space, not only for the government to run, but to preserve national treasures like that, which is kind of crazy.
Imagine like the Declaration of Independence and
I wonder. I mean,
stuff
those,
like that.
yeah, those have their own bunkers. I don't know. Although
Oh,
we've
true.
used the Mount Weather site. I saw that, of course, after September 11th, most of the congressional leadership was brought there by helicopter. And then again in 2015, in April, a major power outage in the D.C. region temporarily caused Department of Homeland Security to shift operations to the alternate National Emergency Operations Center up in Mount Weather. So anyway,
Interesting.
that's a little tidbit right there.
Yeah, no, I like that bunker. And we're going to return to that bunker quite often, but
Yeah.
it progressively gets worse and worse and smellier and smellier. And yeah.
Yes.
So we walk into the bunker for the first time, and it is crazy. It's a madhouse. There's so many people that are packed in, and Mitch just needs to find. No, in the beginning, he's sorry. In the beginning, he is led by a person there to where he
Yes.
needs to be, and we are sitting on this meeting, discussing what just happened, and TJ, the head of FEMA, he's most concerned about the water and how if that goes, and he kind of brought this up in the meeting at the White House before this happened, but as soon as the water goes, then everything is going to go downhill south really quickly after that. You're going to begin to see through the course of these couple meetings at the bunker the president really take this hardline stance of becoming, like what TJ said, becoming a dictator, like democracy ends. So, and then at the end of that scene, we get sort of like all the operators, the FBI, the CIA. They're standing at the back of this conference. Rap's like, we fucked up.
Yeah.
We messed up. It was on us. We knew this was going to happen, and he's pissed. You could tell he's pissed in that situation, and he tells Kennedy, he's like, I'm going home.
Yep.
You find me someone to go kill, or
Get me
find me
intel.
someone to. You give me some intel.
He turns in the phone and says, Kennedy, once you got something on this, call me in. But until then, let's save a spot in the bunker for you professionals who, can do your job better than I can, and let me do my job of killing once you have a name. He also says, though, there's only one person who can fix this. And so thinking of like, know thy enemy, he's smart enough to say, find the guy who's responsible, because that's where I come in. Only once you know who's responsible, he's the only one smart enough to fix this, or the only one who has the picture, the big picture to fix this. And so we're already seeing that know thy enemy play out of that. We're going to go nowhere with solving this unless we get to that guy and you give me a chance with him, and I'll get you what you need.
The chance for mitigation has come and gone.
Yeah.
And now we just have to clean it up. And the only way to clean it up is to find PowerStation. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to come back to it later, but real quick while you mentioned it, was that Rep did have a contact. There was a lady assigned, to walk him through the bunker. She's opening doors for him, swiping key cards. When he comes back in a few chapters, though, I just think it fits to talk about it here. He walks in the bunker and it's chaos. People sleeping everywhere. People stuff on cots.
Worse.
It smells bad. And he has to just turn to a kid. There's some kid playing, probably one of the family members. And he's like, hey, kid, do you know the director of the CIA? No, first, I think he says, do you know the director of CIA? And the kid's like, what? But then he goes, oh, someone you would actually recognize. How about the president? You seen him? And the kid's like, oh, yeah, he's over there. That's how crazy things are. And then there he is. There's Alexander wearing his running shoes and jeans and a Crimson Tide sweatshirt.
I'm just imagining like the scene from Independence Day where like they're all like the president and all those people are in that bunker, but like jacked up to a lot more, because this bunker's huge, bigger,
thousands,
mass chaos. But yeah, like that's what when I read things, I try to envision something from a movie or a thing to like tie it back to get it to stick in my mind. So
I feel like I'd prefer an alien invasion
oh
over,
yeah, I think I
over
would prefer
how
an alien invasion.
Americans turn on each other, in this book without food and water and electricity. I was like, at least aliens have a chance of being nice. Like
No,
here,
because I
it's
feel like
dog eat dog.
with aliens, we probably like rally together to
Yeah.
defeat them. It's like
Yeah.
we're not in this case. We're not rallying together. We're actually totally
Yeah.
being separated, isolated, fending for our families, fending for ourselves.
Yeah. There's so many stories that take that. Our tragedy of this plot has to be so bad the world can't help but unite. Like The Watchmen. I don't know if you read the graphic novel, but that's basically the plot of the graphic novel is the threat has to be big enough that the world's willing to come together. And the movie kind of changed that a little bit. But it's like,
only seen the movie.
Here, the issue is just America. And so even a plot big enough to take the whole country down still doesn't unite us. It is that thing that can destroy our whole way of life, and yet it still is not enough to get people to pool their resources and come together at large. And I think Kyle's saying something about American society and politics, with that statement.
I'm going to counterpoint with, I would have thought a global pandemic
would have done it.
Even one that's not, the worst possible pandemic that we could have seen would have brought us closer together. But, it's actually made it
it
really
almost
worse.
It almost did for a while. I mean,
it did.
I remember
for
in
a
the
hot
early
second.
days, and maybe it was when there was more anxiety and fear, a direct anxiety and fear. I feel like we were starting to rally and say, like, we can pull through this. And some of those tributes were really moving, to frontline workers and delivery people. And then it all got really old and people just got cranky and even more divisive.
Around Easter.
Yeah. As they got just more sick of quarantine. So maybe that goes to show we can rally together, we can unite, but it's an issue of stamina. It's an issue of
a short period
longevity.
of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when like the people weren't seeing, like, it wasn't like Contagion was happening where, one out of every 4 people are dying, like type thing. Whereas it wasn't that bad. So like we're not seeing, it's something that you don't see. It's
but, I mean, 100,000 Americans, gone.
Oh yeah, I'm not trying to say.
But again, and Kyle's made this point in a couple of his interviews just this week on the virtual tour. It's not really as bad as it could have been. Imagine if the infection and death rate was multiplied greatly, or it took, younger people at the same rate it takes elderly, or it took healthy people with no pre-existing conditions at the same rate. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Would that be enough? We would hope it never comes to it, but would that be enough to unite us?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope we don't see it.
Although,
I hope to God we don't see it.
We're at a perfect point in the book to have this conversation because chapter 25 is where we meet Jed Jones.
Yeah, I really like this character.
Yeah. I think, wow, there's so much great things to say about this book, but Jed Jones might just be one of the best new characters rolled into the series in a long time. I don't know. He's great. So basically we meet this radio broadcaster who is a self-declared fringe survivalist podcaster. He's been on the internet for a little while with this fringe survivalist kind of backwoods outdoorsy mentality.
What's funny about this is when I listened to a podcast for our last Road to Total Power, I listened to a podcast that was like on off the grid radio.
Okay.
And it's done by this guy who he just does podcasts about living off the grid. And I was like, this guy is Jed. Like Jed. He could be. It was the whole time when I was thinking about it. The podcast was from like 2016, but I was like, have you read Mitch Rapp? Because you are Jed.
Well, maybe so. That again though shows how in tune Kyle is, right? In Lethal Agent,
I mean, he lives in
Wyoming,
Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Yeah, Wyoming. So there's probably some survivalist spaces on,
Sure, but like he just understands media. Like, you remember Lethal Agent was the time of like the Russians rigging the election and, cyber bots attacking us and influencing public opinion. And Mitch put propaganda artists and video makers to go viral in with the terrorists. Well, now he's putting, while America's being divided, a fringe survivalist podcaster. So I feel like Kyle's keeping up with real media trends and like real influences on public opinion. And there
Right.
is a deep strain of this, like, Joe Rogan or, Jack Carr's done a bunch of shows, or Jocko Willink, or some of these guys who are just more like rugged, tough outdoorsmen. That's huge, right, in media right now. So, the Battle Line guys, the Black Rifle Coffee guys, there's so much media out there that's like a Jed Jones. And so here's, though, where I was split on Jed's actual philosophies, right? I love the stuff he's spitting, like, the government doesn't have your back, and right, they're letting you down, and they really don't have a plan. You got to take this into your own hands.
He's really trying to unite people.
But then, yeah, exactly. He's
But
also
then he cracks.
crapping on the government, right? He is calling them out,
Yes.
but rightfully so. Isn't that the First Amendment, right? At the same time, though, look at what he does to one of his callers. So, another thing Kyle does well.
I really like that.
Love this. I mean, think about trolls or these idiots who just say these, divisive comments just to start fires. Usually, the media platform will eat that up, right? Like the the interviewer would roll with it and love it because it's inflammatory. Well, Jed shuts this asshole down. He kicks him off his show and goes, "What are you doing?" Here's a quote. "The shit has officially hit the fan, and we are all Americans. There are no more Democrats and Republicans. No more rednecks and no more snowflakes. We've got to work together. Us knuckle draggers might be able to kill and gut a deer, but those little nerdy guys might be able to set you up with solar panels to keep you alive. And if you eat some bad barbecue, united we stand, assholes. Divided, we're screwed." I love that. He cuts a guy off his show and tells him, "Stop with your, right, left, extreme politics. We're all Americans right now."
Californian snowflakes, yeah.
Yep.
No, I really like that, and I feel like Kyle does a good job of trying to be, he's got to make these books. He tries to make the books, sort of readable to both, not alienate a single population. But I agreed with Jed in that situation. Like,
Yeah.
if we're in that situation, we just gotta. Everyone has a base of knowledge, and let's stand together.
Yeah.
He does crack later on. We will see, which I'm sure anyone would in that situation. But in this instance, I don't know. Jed was probably my favorite character.
Yeah.
Introduced in this book.
Yeah. And he's a podcaster. What's not to like about him?
Oh yeah, exactly. What is this guy's setup that he's able to broadcast to the all of the United States?
It is on, because he's taken off. Like, he's become the default media and the only way people are getting their news. He must have some wicked setup. He's in what? Is it Idaho, we later learn?
Yeah.
Because a couple of scenes take place at his home, but he must have a setup.
Well, I'm guessing he relays it and then people rebroadcast it.
That's true. He could have a network of people that replay it and rebroadcast.
Yeah,
that's true. Hey, well, just because there's a couple other scenes that take place back with Rap out in Manassas and at home with Claudia and Anna. I jumped the gun last episode on the scene with telling her she's not going back to school and her friend Tina, but when I reread that again, man, that pulls at your heartstrings. So sorry that I jumped the gun on that episode, that scene last time.
Oh, it's all right. But no, that was I feel like that the scene with Anna and Claudia, I don't know, it begins to show the human side of Rap. We don't really get a lot of that, and I feel like he's always wanted a family, and now we're starting to see him really get this family more. Anna's growing up with him, and we're learning, like, it's very brief. Obviously, it's not like the whole book that we're trying to get the inner workings of Rap and how he wants to be a father figure. But, these little tidbits we get of his relationship with Anna and Claudia. It's nice to see, like, Rap as a human being, not just this machine killer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, the story kind of pivots here to the Russians. Irene was finally able to get some leads. I think there was something in a chat room that they saw some chatter on that might have linked PowerStation to the Russians. And that intel is coming in right as Sonia is again trying to deliver what she knows to the FBI.
Right.
She actually ventures out of her home. It sounded like somewhere in central D.C., not far out of downtown, maybe like around the U Street or Petworth neighborhood kind of, but far enough where she's able to walk her way a few miles to the FBI building right on Pennsylvania Avenue. And she wants to do the right thing, but there's a riot. The crowds are not happy with the situation. They're outside the FBI building demanding answers to improve what's going on. And Sonia has no way of getting the information through. She even says, like, I could push my way in front of the crowd, and what am I going to tell one of the guards, as I just look like a crazy person who's trying to kill them?
Right.
Oh, I'm a Russian sleeper agent who has, I'm secretly a Russian agent who has information about the attack. They're going to think she's crazy. Or then she says, I could go to a phone booth, and hopefully we'll have one that somehow has power or is on a backup generator. But who would I even call? Or I could find someone with a cell phone that can make an emergency call. She's like, I don't know the FBI's number, and 911 sure as hell ain't taking me serious right now.
Right.
So,
yeah. So, we cut back to Rapp again, back at the bunker. The president wanted him there to be when he called the Russian president. We get this nice intimidation tactic that the President Alexander is using against the Russians, and he, is doing a Zoom call, like
I know
we all
about
know.
those.
Yeah, exactly. And calls him up. The guy's like, yeah, we don't know what you're talking about. And then he looks to Irene and says, hit it, Irene. And then, boom, power goes out in Moscow. They finally get the thing back up. He's like, are you willing to talk now? He's like, this is ridiculous. It is act of war.
President
right?
Utkin says that's an act of war.
Right.
And Utkin, the Russian president, points out, what's he doing here? Because who's standing behind Alexander?
Oh, right. Exactly. Mitch Rapp.
He's like, what the hell is he doing in this meeting?
That was the whole point.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but,
it works.
Alexander lays it all down. He's like, listen, we both have nukes. You're not going to do anything to us. Also, we know that you, try to position yourself monetarily to overcome this.
To brace for this.
To brace for this, but you're not fully set up to do this. You're going to have impacts. It would highly benefit you to get our power back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us what you know.
So, and he whispers to, or no, the other guy comes in.
Comes in. And he's like, hey, our embassy in Washington actually does have something. And president is like, what? The Russian president's like, what? And the embassy, it turns out, did send an agent to go talk to a guy who had information on the power grid. And so it kind of cuts out with Alexander strong-arming the Russians into coming clean and saying, we can't give you we don't know who the man was. We don't know how to contact him. But what we can do for you is give you the name and address of our agent who spoke to him. And maybe by contacting her, you can get some information about the guy she met. So they blow
two
it,
guys
right?
are like,
the Russians burn Sonia.
Which is kind of interesting. But I guess, they know that their game is up. But yeah, they're like, the two guys who were in the meeting was like, hey, actually, the embassy did speak to someone I heard, on a rumor like that.
I wonder
I like that scene.
Do you think the Russian president is playing a game there for plausible deniability? Or,
for sure.
Well, here's the other thing. Or does it show that he's pretty weak? Because some of these countries where you have to be a strong man, if something like that gets out, that information like that was at the lower levels or in your intelligence service, and no one brought it to you as president, that can undermine all of your legitimacy in some of these, dictatorships. So I'm kind of like, do you think that's a hint that the Russian president is not very comfortable in his position? The fact that his intelligence service and his diplomatic networks are keeping things that big from him and making decisions without him? Because that could be a plot line in the future, if Utkin sticks around or not.
True. I just read it as that it was deniability.
Plausible deniability.
Utkin was obviously has a past, with Rapp and the president. So he just
I knew nothing.
As far as way. I mean, exactly. I mean, you saw Utkin was like, we're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
We're going to try to position ourselves.
We passed on the information. It's not like we wanted to hurt you. So we're kind of innocent here. Well, do you think we can do it? Do you think the president of the United States has the authority, or the ability, I should say, does the United States government have the ability to literally flip a switch and turn off the power in a foreign city? Like, cut the government to the Kremlin and all of Moscow. Cut the power, to the Kremlin. Like, can we do that? with a flip of a switch.
Do we have someone like Marcus Dumont, like a real life Marcus Dumont?
If we do, I think we could. I mean,
we probably have some hacker. We employ hackers, and I don't know.
I don't know.
Obviously, in the situation, I'm sure everybody, because America's down, I'm sure like everything, like there's a lot of chaos in other side, in the internet of other countries.
Yeah.
So,
well, it means
everything is probably weak.
If we can, it means they can. Like, does that mean
True.
Another foreign government has the ability to do that to us?
That's a good question.
I think so. I think the answer is yes, right?
It's like nukes. It's like a mutually assured destruction.
Exactly.
And it's
no
all
one's
about
going to do it.
Fringe hackers out.
Yeah.
Trying to do it themselves.
Yeah. This book, if you think about it, it's the attack by Alton is cybersecurity, but you can equally have a thriller that's all cyber based, right? About hacking and financial networks and government systems. Not just the cheap, like, I'm going to get your nuclear codes kind of plot line, but imagine a plot like Total Power where it's 100% hackers. Like, instead of John Alton, it's like anonymous. That would make a good thriller, no?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was kind of like the plot of
Deception
the movie
Point.
we watched.
Well, there's also that Deception Point, that one of the Dan Brown books, and it's kind of outdated now. But that was like the NSA one. Remember that? Like
the NSA supercomputer starts thinking for itself.
Yeah, the AI and the supercomputer. I mean, Dan Brown was
that was
like
what? Way
early.
He wrote
90s,
that in like
early 2000s, 90s.
I think 99. Yeah. I read that one. Yeah,
that was pretty good.
That was one of his better ones.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
It's outdated now, obviously.
Oh yeah,
like in the moment, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like something like that could be a good thriller in the strain of Total Power. But
it's similar to, I don't know, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, or but on like a grander scale.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was fun. that was the Russian scene.
All right, so we quickly cut to Alton in his bunker. The government is trying to get a hold of him. Janice Crane's trying to call him. He's not answering. You can see that, there's some tension starting to happen between him and Faisal. Faisal wants to connect with his men in the field, see if they were able to hit all their objectives. Obviously, this is way too risky. And so at the very end of the scene, the guy, the construction worker who built, parts of the house for him, comes back and is like, starts talking out loud, like, I know that you're down there because that didn't look like just a normal foundation or whatever. And so this plays a plot later. We quickly cut back to Sonia, or first Rap, taking a chopper. He's found out, who this Russian mole is, living in DC, and he's dropped off by Fred Mason in the middle of DC. And I like this scene where, like, and this is one of my favorite parts of the book, or one of the favorite things I liked about the book, but this whole apocalyptic theme in this genre really takes off now. Walking through DC, he describes it feeling like a war zone. And at the same time, we're going to go through these chapters where we're cutting back and forth between Rap and Sonia. And so Sonia gets attacked in her house. Literally, she is, peering out the window, and which she's had to like drape to try to block out, any sort of, if she had any light or fire to get out. But finally these men like come knock on her door. She has to run. She gets away. At the same time, we have Rap, who's walking through DC, hears these gunshots that these men are firing, and he's like, of course, they're in the spot where I need to be. So Rap encounters these men, takes them out in quick succession, and is now on the run for Sonia. He realizes that he's not going to be able to find her. He calls up Irene and is like, listen, is there any way we can do this? And ultimately they decide, like, the Russians can turn on the cell phone in order to find him, and we're going to catch up to it in a second. So we jump back to Alton at the bunker, and we see how gruesome, the people he's gotten in bed with can be. He decides, like, we need to take out this family. He sends them up. They take them out. They bury them. And he realizes, like, what I think, it starts to click, like, who did I actually get into bed with here?
Mhm.
Like, this is, again, loss of control. He's like, I need these men, but do I really need them? Should I get rid of them quickly? Because these are not people that I really want to be messing with. Why did I actually bring them into my small little circle?
Yeah. He changes their objective too from like, you were going to help me hit these substations. You've done that. If the next 5 or 6 of you hit the substations, whatever, the attack's basically done. And he's like, look, how about your mission is to get me to Mexico and help me get to my house, get out of the country. And if you can take me to the border, we'll call it square. I gave you the plans. You got your attack. Then you helped me. You got me out. And he's realizing he's going to need that insurance policy, the heart rate monitor, for the rest of the time that he's with these ISIS guys, because it's pretty gruesome how they murder this family and hide them and everything. And yeah, he's like, I'm changing the game. I don't care about how many more substations you hit. Get me to Mexico. That's our job.
So again, cutting back to Sonya on the run, she escaped one gang of men and is now encountered by another gang of men. And so this apocalyptic, I'm just envisioning like, Dawn of the Dead, The Walking Dead, any sort of, 28 days later, just instead of zombies, it's like the power's out and you got people like trying to scavenge for resources. I guess this will be like early on in the zombie apocalypse, right?
Yeah. Even that scene of like, she goes through like a broken storefront and she's moving furniture and trying to find a place to hide. And that random family, right? She notices, I think it's like a dresser or something out of place, and it looks like it can slide, and it has a rope tied to it, and like goes under a door or something. And she eventually realizes there's a hiding spot back here.
And then you
pull the string, and it closes the like drawer in front of the wall, so no one sees the door. And then there's an Asian family waiting, and a man swings, I think, a 2x4 at her and misses, and she's like, it's okay. And basically it's kind of a nice moment where Sonya and this family hiding out like for their life realize there's a common bond between them. And I like this quote of, this is maybe one of my favorites in the book. She barricades herself in with the family, and then Kyle writes, quote, neither spoke much English, but that didn't seem to be much of a barrier to understanding. It turned out the international language wasn't love. It was fear. That's what binds them together. Fear. This family hiding out and Sonya on the run.
That's totally true. Like, so eventually we get a sort of like off-scene killing of the men who were chasing her by Rap. Essentially, she hears some gunshots, toot, toot, toot. And
what was that sound?
He knocks on the... that's my silencer impersonation.
I was like, you didn't go with the pew pew. You went with the ch ch.
That was my attempt of doing a silencer.
That was pretty good.
Sorry,
pretty good.
Thanks.
You're like a Foley artist. You know those Foley artists who make the sounds for movies?
Screw you. He knocks on the door and is like, Sonya, open up. And
that was me knocking on the door.
You're so funny. You are so funny.
It's not as good as your silencer.
You're so funny.
What does Sonya's phone sound like when the Russians ping it?
Bring, bring. You're an ass. You can put that in the end credits.
Oh no, that's staying in.
Anyways, off scene, we get Rap taking out the men who are chasing Sonya, and he knocks on the door and says, open up. So she's rescued by Rap and Coleman, and we get this nice little introduction between, which I think is going to be this burgeoning romance. I'm gonna ship hard Coleman and Sonya, and hopefully she comes back in later novels.
Hopefully some foreshadowing here.
Yes. And so they say, she turned her face away from the gale and saw a man standing against a wall 10 feet away. He was wearing black fatigues with a balaclava covering most of his face and a compact assault rifle in his hands. As he fell in behind her, they locked eyes for a moment. His eyes were deep blue and unexpectedly beautiful. So we know, blue eyes, Scott Coleman, our blonde-haired assassin.
Yeah, I was actually expecting blonde hair to be in that line. His eyes were deep blue.
Me too.
His hair was...
And blonde, and his hair was blonde. And then immediately right after this, we get this nice little scene that there's you start to hear shooting, and Mitch is just like, Scott, and then there's a single crack of a shot, and Scott takes the guy out. So I like that.
Yeah. Rap's just walking with Sonya, like guiding her onto the helo. Doesn't even turn towards the guy, just goes, Scott. And that's it. Scott drops the dude behind him while they're getting shot at. That's good.
So we get this beginning of a hopefully burgeoning romance between the two.
And it's kind of crazy, but we didn't even get to my favorite scene yet. So I think when we get there, we're gonna see more about how Sonya fits in. Let's put it that way. Fits in with Scott, Mitch, and the crew. But that's coming soon. In the meantime, like we said, there's a couple of scenes of Alton in his bunker, charging his heart rate monitors. Faisal Ibrahim, the ISIS guys, are like, they're getting restless. They want to go attack the other substations and keep the grid down. And of course, who are they listening to on the radio? Our friend Jed Jones.
And this is where he cracks.
Yeah. He loses it and just says, enough is enough. He calls out the government and says, if you guys care, if you're doing anything, you have to reassure the American people now. And since I am the biggest voice addressing the public in this country, not even the president, I need the director of FEMA, TJ Burton, who's supposedly the one leading the, quote, response. I need him on my show. The American people deserve to hear from him. And he challenges him. Is he too chicken, too scared, has nothing to say? And if that's the case, the American people know they're screwed. Not even the top guy in charge of natural disaster or disaster response is willing to talk, and come out publicly. So
I think that's the whole him cracking is going to play a role later on, briefly, but it will play a role in this idea that the president can't have that happening. And this one guy, and actually they're going to use it to their advantage. So, luckily Jed doesn't get killed, but you can imagine that this sort of person would be a prime target for the government if they could mount some sort of assault to take out, because they don't want this mass dissidence being spread. So they need that person on their side.
Although, do you mind if I read a quote from Jed? Just it kind of summarizes what's happening. Like, we haven't talked about much what's on the ground happening across America, and Jed is really the only one relaying this to the American people. So during one of his broadcasts, he says, quote, I've been doing a lot of thinking, but I'm not sure what conclusions I've come to. None good. That I can tell you. The power went out 10 days ago, and I don't have any reliable reports of the government having fixed anything. As far as I can tell, basically the lights are on in a few military outposts, a couple of ports, and some off-grid hippie communes. That's it. If you want to know where we're headed, you don't have to look further than New Orleans. Their water's completely out, and the place is in the process of melting down. Based on reports I'm getting from people on the ground, the military's in full retreat. They don't even have the manpower. They don't have a supply chain, and even worse, they don't have a plan. In a week, I'm not sure there's going to be a New Orleans. And in 2, I'm not sure there's going to be a New York or LA or Chicago. Well, you get my point. I don't think this is temporary anymore. I think the power is going to be out for months, maybe longer. So a lot of the advice I've been giving you is bullshit. I'm sorry for that. I truly am. I wish I had some new speeches to make or relevant podcasts I could dig up and tell you how to survive, but I don't. The government's basically telling you to stay in the cities, and that makes sense if they can provide food, water, and security. But what if they can't? The answer is I don't know. If you're one of the hundreds of millions of people living in a city, do you try to get out? Do you need to think about that? 3 months down the road, if the power's still out, will you be alive? If you do try to get out of the city, are you even capable of it? And if you're capable of it, where are you going to go? Because you don't want to end up standing in the middle of a rural highway getting snowed on. That's not an improvement. So where am I going with this? Simple. I want someone in the government who's smart enough to find his ass with both hands to contact me. And let me tell you who that person is. TJ Burton of FEMA. Everyone says he's a solid guy who gives a shit. You hear me, TJ? People are saying I have the biggest audience in the country right now. So why don't you cowboy up and come on my show? Tell the people who pay your salary what the hell's going on and what you're doing about it. They deserve to know. And droning on about how they should stay calm and stay put isn't cutting it anymore. And let's be clear here. We all know people from the government are listening. So if you don't come on, everybody out there is going to know you got nothing, that we're on our own to survive. The gauntlet's been thrown. Let's see what happens.
You know, reading that back to me, it really, one of the things that I took for granted from this book, or I don't know if took for granted is the right term, but didn't appreciate in terms of having power, or how rapidly things happen in this book. The time scale of going from power off to total chaos is rapid fast, and I don't know if that's a dramatization or if that's actually how it would happen. I think early on when we were talking about this book, I asked you, like, would this really happen that fast? I don't know, but it plays well to this whole idea of the apocalyptic genre that Kyle is trying to encompass in this portion of the book. And yeah, while we don't get a lot from, besides Mitch going into the city and Sonya's perspective, in terms, and obviously the president bunkers, like, understanding what's going on, like, Jed is the voice of what is actually happening, and we really get a perspective of what could happen if this attack did happen. And so that was nice to, like, really understand the impact of this attack through him.
Yeah.
And he, it's like me telling you how to save your, collect your urine and or make a fire is not going to save you if the power is going to be really out this long.
Yeah. And Jed becomes almost this, like, narrator for us, the reader. He's narrating the wider picture of what's happening across America, which is kind of cool because the story itself can only give you these snippets and these scenes. Mitch in DC with the lights out, or Mitch driving to the bunker in West Virginia, or now we're going to see the house in Manassas. Again, this book felt very East Coast to me in terms of where the setting was, but Jed Jones' narration of the country crumbling gave it this national feel. And so as a reader, I liked his role in doing that, because the action was pretty central just to really 3 or 4 main locations where the story took place, yet the scope of it was so much grander thanks to quotes like that we just heard from Jed. Yeah.
Well, let's get to your favorite scene.
Yes.
And the scene that I really liked. But so we cut back to, Sonya's at Scott's house. She gets showered up, dressed, puts on some of Claudia's clothes, and Scott gives her some advice before Rap arrives.
Because Rap's coming, and Scott's trying to let her know Rap interrogations aren't the warm and fuzzy feeling. You don't know what to expect when Rap starts asking you questions.
I liked how Scott, he didn't underestimate her. He's like, you've probably been taught how to lie as a deception. He fully embraced her as a Russian mole, and was like, listen, this is not the time to play your games. Be honest, because if you're not, and be concise, don't give wordy answers, and be honest. So
I like Scott's specific advice to her about once Rap starts asking questions.
Yeah, Scott specifically says, don't get long-winded or start trying to answer questions he hasn't asked you. Right now, he thinks you as a Russian operative who was following orders. He doesn't have a personal problem with you. Don't give him a reason to develop one. This isn't a good cop, bad cop. It's bad cop and worse cop. So I'm guessing Scott is the bad cop and Mitch is the worst cop.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah. The bad cop wants to keep the Russian mole, though.
I don't know about you, but Rap's entrance here is freaking classic. He busts into the room, goes right for the food in the kitchen, makes himself a plate, pours wine into a water glass.
Finishes the food.
Yeah, and he just eats the whole plate, staring at her. She watches him eat. In less than a minute, he scarfs down the food, finishes wine out of a water glass, goes back for more, and while he's getting more, asks her, "What's Russia's involvement in this?" And then she gives him, like, none. And then his second question, is there beer in the fridge? I just love it. And so
I could just see him, like, drinking a pint of wine, downing it, and being looking at it and be like,
and eating a whole plate of pasta.
You got any beer?
Oh, I love it.
And then at the very end of this, like it's, she's honest, very
Yes.
concise, and she's
Yes.
like, "Ugh, but the only thing I was able to get was this hard drive, and I could just see their faces in my mind of being like, you have what? Excuse me?
Yep. A hard
where
drive
is
from
it?
Alton's computer.
Is it back in DC? Like in their mind, is it back in DC? Oh shit, I just left there. Like no, it's upstairs in my room.
I love how we don't get a description of their reaction because it's so clear. We know exactly what Rapp and Coleman's faces look like. Instead, Kyle ends the chapter with her saying, it's an Apple device, and Apple encryption is no joke. I don't know if you can get anything off of it. And I'm just like, I could see the two looking like if this were a movie, instead of cutting chapter and ending scene, you have Coleman and Rapp face each other and just at the same time go, Marcus.
Exactly. Definitely like looking at each other
and then it just cuts scenes to like Marcus Dumont tapping away on a computer in like a dimly lit dungeon somewhere in the bunker.
So how did you feel about Scott's in the next chapter? We get Scott's like true feelings as bad cop. So how about we do a little exercise where we role play, and we're gonna play this scene where Scott and Rapp interact after talking to Sonia.
I think we got to flip a coin for who gets Rapp.
All right. Flip a coin.
I'm flipping a Post-it note because that's what I have.
Sick.
All right, Chris on one side, Mike on the other. Whose never name is face up gets to pick. Coleman or Rapp? Chris, your choice.
All right, Coleman.
What? You're not going Rapp?
I like Scott.
All right, I like Scott too.
And he gets the girl.
All right, in this case. All right. I thought you'd be the family man, Mitch raising Anna and.
I want Rapp. Yeah, you're right. I want Rapp.
How do you not? Anyway,
right, you're Scott.
Quick. Oh, I love how Scott opens this scene. First words. I think I'm gonna keep her.
She's not a pet, Scott. She's a Russian mole.
Come on, Mitch.
Throw her back, fill her backpack with some provisions, and tell her to hit the road.
She'd die out there.
Better than waking up one day with your throat slit.
What can I say? I like hot, dangerous women. And don't you pretend. Don't you? Between Claudia, Donatella, it's a miracle you're still breathing.
It's your jugular. You do what you want.
And I think Scott's pretty successful in convincing Mitch to keep Sonia around. She's going to be useful.
Really hope that we don't see much more of her, but I really hope that she makes an appearance in the books to come.
Right.
But yeah, I like this little scene where Kennedy arrives at the house and Mitch, they have such a good relationship with each other. Mitch knows that she's just going to want a small little glass of wine and have a meal. And doesn't pour like this giant, which I would want. It's a giant glass of wine in this situation. And they have Marcus. And I love the scene where Marcus has this one line. Literally Rapp is like going back and forth. And then at the very end, Marcus is like, yeah, I was only able to get everything off of it, and I already sent it to all of our analysts. Kennedy's like, I'm pretty sure Marcus was practicing all day to say that to you. And he's like, well, not all day, but a while.
He's working on it a little bit here and there.
And Rapp's like, how did you get it? Like, Apple's, And of course, I love how he puts in, the CEO helped out now that he's losing all of his money in tech stocks. So
the CEO of Apple just happened to remember, through all their arguments with the government about encryption and data privacy, he just happened to remember, oh, there is a workaround. We did put a backdoor into Apple devices where we can get your data. Oh, we didn't realize that. It only took a national emergency where 300 million Americans will perish in a year for us to tell the government, you know what, we can unlock Apple devices of private citizens.
You're telling me you don't know my 4-digit passcode? That's a lie.
Now. That's bull. I like Marcus's line also. He's like, there's real food here or something like that.
Yeah, what are they eating? They're eating like lamb something.
Oh, they got everything.
It sounded so good. Claudia, some nice French food.
I think that's what I liked about the scene was amidst all this chaos, Kyle took a moment to bring the crew together at home in their digs and just, it was everybody, right? It was Claudia, it was Scott, it was Mitch, it was Marcus, Anna somewhere, is off. Tommy comes up. I think someone asked how he's
Right.
doing. Asked Kennedy. I don't think he's there. Are the kids
No,
playing?
Mitch
He's in the
says you
bunker.
can bring him here.
But Mitch says you can bring him
here,
if you want, and then even I think it's Kennedy. Somebody thinks to bring some hot food out to all of the drivers, out on the street
Right.
who brought them in. And he's like, I bet those guys want a hot meal. They've probably been, working nonstop. And it's like you see the inner workings of the intelligence agency, and I can just imagine like special operators doing this with their families, either after or before a mission. It was just kind of cordial get together and missed all the chaos. I love like we don't get a Christmas scene, right? This is
happening during
scene.
Christmas time, right? And
Yeah.
so this is a Christmas scene. Yeah.
I'm glad Kyle took the time to get away from the craziness and put all of our characters together in a comfortable, cozy environment, and they welcome Sonya into it with a little humor right beforehand.
Right.
So.
I think it's a couple days after Christmas because we're probably like 8 because the attack happened on Christmas morning.
Yeah, it's 10 days
so
since
it's like
the
at least 8 or 10
yeah.
days since the account.
It's
it's
just into
it's,
the new year. Yeah,
it's a stand-in for a Christmas morning thing. But yeah, no, it as I was saying before, these bunker scenes really show Mitch's humanity, and it's nice to see that in this character. It really adds to his character development. So
this scene adds something to the story as well, and our theme, Know Thy Enemy. Kennedy's sitting there with just the right amount of wine that she likes, and at one point she kind of looks out. I can see her like in a daze if this were a movie. And she just kind of starts spitballing like who she thinks John Alton is, trying to get a read or a persona or a psychological profile of this guy. And she ends up nailing it. They're talking about what do we do next? And she says, basically, Alton's socially isolated, feels no compassion for others, and has extremely powerful delusions of superiority. He feels that he hasn't gotten his due from society, from women, from his employers, and now he's looking to make everyone pay. And I just feel like Kennedy's ability to understand and start thinking like Alton is going to be part of how they get the upper hand. And then Know Thy Enemy, like Kennedy says that, and Rapp cuts in with, so he's a brilliant psychopath who's probably doing tequila shots at his beach house in Mexico right now. Rapp got it. They know him. He wants to get to Mexico and escape to his beach house. And that's going to help them plan their next move, knowing he's going to be on his way to the southern border, having ISIS as his bodyguards. So Know Thy Enemy, it's like by chilling, relaxing, and spending this holiday together, the team is able to refocus and do what they do best, get a step ahead and think inside the minds of the villains.
Next we progress to Rapp it's a couple days later. Things have gotten even more out of control, and Rapp is on his way back to the bunker, but Irene calls him midway, and he's like, we know that Alton bought this property. You're the closest person to it. You should go check it out. And Rapp is happy about this because he's almost positive that the meeting he's going to take with the president is to potentially go out to Idaho and take out Jed Jones because of all the stuff he's saying on his podcast or on, that's the government doesn't want to say. And we get Rapp examining this area. And it's kind of cool because we get back to one of the good things I liked about the third option we really see Rapp as a spy here. He's able to manipulate his ability, his appearance, and he doesn't just walk around like an operator of this area. He, changes his posture, changes his gait, tries to look like, just some hobo who's walking around rummaging. And while he's doing that, he's able to find, oh, there's this apartment that was never touched. Oh, there's this truck, but that is not full of fuel and looks like every other military truck that is rolling down the road now, which is like, it's nice foreshadowing for later because obviously that's what Alton was going for. He doesn't find anything. And then the FBI roll up and he's like, all right, you guys got this? I'm good. I'm going to go. And finally on his way back, he gets trapped by these two trees and just your regular old family. Obviously, like shows how dire the situation has gone. This father and son who normally would use their guns to kill deer or moose, are cutting down trees to try to trap people. And he does a nice thing. He gives them all of his stuff, except for he's like, And the son's like, oh, maybe does the car have a battery? We could use that. And Rap's like, I'm gonna need that. You're not getting that.
He's worried about Claudia having to deal with telling her,
True.
he gave away the Tesla.
Exactly.
No, not happening.
Exactly.
Or you got a scratch on the Tesla. Not explaining that to Claudia. Yeah, the family just cut down a tree to cut him off, and then when he backs up, they cut a tree behind him, and it's like all that just to see if a random dude driving down the street has stuff you can take from him. Like, whew, America's in a bad place.
Stuff's got real bad.
They're desperate.
Yeah.
I think the family even says like, hey, we got to take care of my wife and like his younger sister. Like, sorry, dude, but we got to take your stuff. And Rap's like, yeah, I get it. That's fine.
Yep.
But
right. So we cut back to the FBI, who has now, they brought their A game. They find these pretty cool solar panels on a rock, which I kind of want myself. And this causes Alton to freak out because he realizes that these people are not, they're going to find him. And this leads to a huge altercation with ISIS, and ISIS ends up killing the entire FBI team. And then this sets, pretty much the rest of the book in motion. We get Alton now has planned for this on the run. He had planned to go on the run, but not this quickly.
You're thinking loss of control. He was going to hide out in the bunker until the whole thing passes, and he can easily get out to Mexico because he put stashes, like different caches, along the route of fuel and supplies that he could just pick up and make it clean to Mexico once everyone's dead. But
right,
he's got to hurry it up now. The FBI's onto him.
Yep. And then, so he leaves, and he has this whole route, and then Rap goes back and sees that, oh, he left. And this is, so now like they're starting to understand who this guy is, the know thy enemy. Like, he had this plan. They sort of realize what they're going to do. They go to the bunker. They get information from the bunker, see that he has other men with him. And this all leads to, really Rap being able to institute his final trap at the end of the book to hopefully capture Alton. Before we get to the, final capture at the substation, so ISIS has their own plan.
Alton's on the run, and Rap has already figured out he's trying to get south to Mexico because he has a house on the beach, and he'll want to get there. And now with the FBI team taken out, they know they're on the move. And they know the truck they're looking for, and the chase is on. And this kind of begins the action that will follow through nonstop until the very end of the book. Rap puts in, or the CIA puts in a plan that is kind of risky, but there's a big payoff if it works. And another theme for the book that I considered pitching to you, Chris, was thinking outside the box. There's a few times where Rap even says, no chance in hell this is going to work. We see in this book, compared to others, Rap doubting himself a whole lot more. This is one of those, this is one of those last stand plans, which is all or nothing. And we actually believe Rap is on the nothing side. Like he thinks this might completely not work and they got nothing left to do. But the idea is they take Jed Jones, and it's a pretty cool mission out in the woods deep into Idaho. They have an outdoor bathroom and latrine, right? So no indoor plumbing. They're totally self-sufficient out in this cabin where Jed Jones, the podcaster, lives. Well, when his wife and daughter are on their way out to the outhouse, Coleman grabs the daughter and Rap grabs the wife. And Rap disguises himself in the wife's clothes. And the reason for that is they don't want to spook Jed. And they go back into the house, and he's like, oh, hey, honey, welcome back. And it's Rap in her clothes. And Rap's like, yeah, not your wife, not honey. And Jed's like,
I like that. Jed's like, I'm making hash.
Yeah.
And no one answers. He's like, wait, no one likes hash? Like, what's up? Like,
although I'm surprised Rap doesn't just start eating it right there, right out of the cast iron.
I would have said, like, yeah, give me 2 eggs on top of my hat. Like, I would have pulled some quippy thing about, like, giving me more food or something like that.
Rap still has that spoon, no?
Oh, yeah.
Rap could pull out the spoon and just start eating right out of the cast iron as Jed's looking at him with his jaw on the floor. No, but this is where Jed's like, the game's up. The government's here to silence me. Are you one of those, spooks who doesn't like free speech and just wants people like me to stop bad-mouthing the government, get it over with. And Rap's like, nah, you're going to play a pretty central role in this thing, if this pans out. So here's what he pitches Jed. You go on the radio and you put out some false information that the government actually is getting huge parts of the Southwest back online, particularly parts of Texas. Well, actually more of like the Gulf Coast area, getting them back online. And they choose a substation in eastern Texas that Alton knows if that substation gets up and running, that's a decent part of the grid that you can bring power back to the region in a timely manner. Well, thinking of Know Thy Enemy, if the country starts believing that's up and running, Rap knows ISIS. ISIS wants maximum damage, maximum carnage. And Rap understands their zealousness and wants to use it against them. If they think a big part of the country's grid is up and running, he knows they'll convince Alton to go attack it. And so the plan is, Alton wants to get to Mexico. ISIS wants to keep the grid down. We can force them to get to this substation in Texas by thinking it's about to start working again. And so Jed goes on the podcast and tells America, the government reached out to me. TJ and FEMA are getting the job done, and we have one part of the country that's ready to come back up online in the coming days. And Jed's torn because he knows by saying that, one, he's giving a false hope, but you're also condemning thousands of Americans to their death. Thousands of people will converge on this area, leading to massive riots, fights, and everything, and it's all fake. Texas is not really going to be up and running. But Know Thy Enemy, it works. It gets ISIS to tell Alton, we don't care about you getting to Mexico, we'll drop you off, but we're going to hit this substation. And if you say this is the one that we have to take down, we're going to go hit it. And Rap was right. He knows they're extremists and not going to stop for anything.
But the one thing that ISIS has to overcome is these heart rate monitors.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, they sort of kill two birds with one stone by, one, they need to change up their vehicle. They take out a Red Cross truck. I kind of like that scene. It's a short little scene, but they do it with such efficiency, and they get everything off the road. These guys are like, they're proficient. But in that Red Cross truck is drugs. And Alton is incapacitated. He's put unconscious. And he wakes up, and he realizes that, he sees like Faisal taking out this old man in this random house, and then Faisal comes back and is like, you messed up. You said that there's a high, if your heart rate gets too high, it'll be triggered. If your heart rate hits 0, it gets triggered. Well, you know what? We're going to keep it right in the middle by keeping you sedated until 6 months and not feed you. And then finally, once everything's gone, we don't care. Like, there won't be anybody for you to send your signal to. So finally, this, all culminates with Rap setting up a nice trap at the Bryan substation in Texas. The cool little, I would kind of like to see the car trap. They're like the netting that gets like to, I was trying to picture that in my head. I would like to see that put out on camera. But yeah, like these guys came loaded. They obviously had set it up as a, one was wearing a suicide bomb, and then obviously the truck was also a car bomb. They kind of, as Rap's getting, in a lot of these novels where Rap is sort of thinking, you can always see the wheels ticking, and we're getting his inner dialogue in his head. It's like, why do they have this many cans? And then it dawns on him, oh, this is a car bomb. Obviously, he's dealing with, they're here for us. This is ISIS I'm dealing with. Why do they have those cans? And so he risks his life to, he even told all of his men, your lives don't mean anything right now. The lives of these people we're trying to take, they mean more than you, because we need their information.
Yeah.
Don't shoot to kill, take a bullet,
body armor.
Maz even, full body armor. Maz even almost dies trying to get the guy who was wearing a suicide vest. But ultimately, he gets Faisal. And
Rap, I think, has to pull him through the windshield, right?
Yes,
as the thing's exploding, Rap grabs him with his armor through the windshield, So with the explosion, it'll actually be pushed away, and the body armor can protect the both of them. It's pretty crazy.
And we get this nice little scene with Rap and a doctor, and I think he's wearing cowboy boots or something. He wakes up after being knocked out by the explosion of the car in the hospital, puts on some cowboy boots, goes over to the room of Faisal, and literally starts torturing him with the doctor in the room. The doctor's like, "Yeah, I'm not comfortable doing this," and I forget what exactly Rap says to the doctor. But then at the end, he's like, "Yeah, you're gonna want to clear your rest of your day. You're staying here with us."
Yep. Because they have to make sure Faisal is lucid enough to tell them where Power Station is.
Exactly.
But they want to torture him to get the information. The doctor's like, "You can't do that. You're going to kill him."
Yep.
And they need the doctor, keep him alive, but also torture him just enough. Yeah, and so eventually they get what they're looking for. The terrorist leads them to some house in Louisiana, Mississippi. They're going through that area, and the terrorist takes them, and Rap's thinking, whoever's guarding Alton, if he's onto us, or Alton himself, he might just kill himself. And knowing ISIS, they'll take out Alton and themselves in an attack, and the game's up. We don't get the information we need to get the grid back up and running. And so this is going to be that kind of dramatic closing of, you need to get into the house, but if you do it and it's booby-trapped and there's a suicide vest, we lose them. And so Rap, they kind of concoct this slightly off-colored plan to have these two women knock on the door and just feign these innocent, hey, we're passing through the area. Do you have some food or a place we can stay just for a night as we try to get to Texas? We hear the power's coming back. And they're playing this like they're like prostitutes or these like scantily clad women. And once again, with Know Thy Enemy, it's kind of weird, but I guess the point is Rap knows these, extremist Islamic men claim to be holier than thou with, wanting to be pure and everything, but secretly, they're trash. And secretly, he's going to want these women and he's going to take them and he's going to let them in and let his guard down. Right. And so he's trying to play off the ISIS weakness of these radicals not knowing what to do when sex is, in your face, staring you in the front door of, you can have these two women. But secretly they contracted, was she a ranger? One of the ladies Rap knew from the special operations community.
She was a special, she was in the,
I think she was a Army Ranger, if I'm not mistaken.
She's also the badass on the airplane with the ring who punches Hamal.
Well, Rap uses her knowing she's pretty good. And they have a working professional relationship where Rap feels comfortable bringing her in. And so her and this model walk up to the door, knock, and the terrorist is giving them nothing. He's, go away, get out of here, points a gun at them, and says, you got to go. Well, it's at this point, Rap comes storming in, diffuses the situation, takes control, and guess who's sitting in one of the other rooms? Power Station. He's drugged. And Rap says, we got to figure this out. And they look at the heart rate monitors, and he's like, bring in Marcus.
You know what's really interesting about this, right? Is that all they had to do was kill him.
But that's
the oxymoron here. I know. They didn't know that. They didn't know that. Like, literally, all you have to do is kill him, and your problems are solved.
Yeah, because the heart rate monitor will give up the goods. It'll trigger the information of how to fix the grid. Well, that's, again, let's thinking about Know Thy Enemy, is Rap starts putting this together, and it's a gamble. Because Rap thinks, why would Alton hook himself up to a heart rate monitor that could launch an attack? And Alton, he's trying to smooth talk him. Once they get Alton,
when they wake him up.
They wake him up. The drugs wear off. He's trying to be a smooth talker. He's like,
he's very calculating.
Yeah, the ISIS took me. I don't know what they were doing with me. I don't know why they needed me. This is crazy. Thank you for saving me. I want to help the country. And Rap's not really having any of it, but he's giving him a little bit. He's keeping him on a leash. He's playing along until Rap goes, yeah, so what are these watches you're wearing? And Alton's like, I don't know. The terrorists just put it on me. And Rap goes, well, that's funny because the doctor said the way your skin's worn away, you've been wearing these for quite a long time, at least a couple of days or months, yeah. And Alton's like, What? And he starts cracking. And eventually Alton starts going, I'll work with you. Get me a pardon. He goes, I'll give you what you want, but I want assurances. And Rapp's like, yeah, we're not playing that game. And Rapp turns to Marcus and goes, Marcus, what do these devices do? And Marcus is like, well, I don't know what they do, but if we cover them, I think it was in lead, right? They were going to encase them in lead.
He knows that they attach to like a receiver that will send something. He's imagining, like
secondary attack.
It could be, most likely it's a secondary attacker. But then Rap again, like knowing the enemy, he's like, what is there to secondary attack?
It's done.
And then immediately, I think Alton then says something about nukes.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, if you
it's going to launch the nukes.
It's going to launch the nukes.
And Rap's like, you would have done it, right? Like ISIS was
exactly.
with you. ISIS wanted the worst attack possible. There's no reason. If this was going to launch another attack, the ISIS guys would have just done it. They would have killed you. The heart rate monitor would have killed you. Off. So he turns to Marcus and he goes, this was an insurance policy. These heart rate monitors were actually how to stop the attack.
No, in that moment, he never admits that he understands like what they are, but he admits that he understands the enemy and understands that, you know what, we have to do this.
Take the gamble.
And he starts to jam a knife into his fingernail to raise his, because Marcus knows that there's two alarms. There's a high and a low. So he's like, oh, let's hit the high. And Marcus is like, you just take them off and it reads 0. And Mitch is like, yeah, that's not that fun.
Yeah. And he sticks that, I think he went with a piece of wood under the nail, knowing how that hurts a lot more than a knife.
Yes.
And the heart rate goes up, and Marcus says, Mitch, you were right.
Exactly.
End of the book. The gamble paid off.
We cut to the final epilogue where things are kind of calm. We don't get much description of Post turn power back on, but we do see Rap in Idaho, back with Jed. Jed is a little confused, what he's doing here, until he opens up his Cadillac and sees John Alton in the back. Because Jed had asked, part of the stipulation of being a part of the plan was to be there when they, killed the son of a bitch who did this plot. In the end, Jed is not super keen with the means of, they walk into the woods and Rap's literally going to shoot him right there in front of Jed. And he's like, yeah, this is not what I imagined. So Rap's like, all right, well.
Well, Jed's like, the deal was, I want to be there when they fry him, thinking, the death penalty and justice will be served. And I want a front row seat to watch the guy fry. Right. And Rap's like, yeah, that's not how the government works right now. He's going to get a different type of death penalty.
Exactly.
And Jed doesn't want any part of it. He says, I'm out.
Yep.
Walks away.
And we end the book with John Alton dying.
And Alton is still whining as he's being taken out of the trunk. I can still help you secure the grid. You still need me. And Rap's like, yeah, okay, buddy.
Yeah, right. Tell it to the gods.
Man, that was something. Hey, I got a topic, though, before we get into our winners and losers and share what we liked about the book and our review. I'm wondering, what's next for Rap's America? Like, this changes the fabric of the universe, does it not? I mean, towards the end of the book, even Kyle puts in this little quote about what the state of the U.S. and global affairs is going to look like. He writes, quote, so where did this leave the country he'd spent his entire life bleeding for? Fucked. According to a group of economists that included 2 Nobel laureates, the U.S. would be down to the population of Peru in a year. The middle would empty out, with its surviving citizens huddled in cities near the coast. Scavenging would be the primary industry. So here's my question. How is Kyle going to deal with the fallout of a new U.S.? I mean, a whole new world order, if you will. The events in Total Power change the universe permanently, right? Like, will Americans ever come together, and support the government and the military and operations anymore? Will Democrats and Republicans reach out across the aisle and try to put us on the path of healing? Does the blame game get worse, right? Like, does the unrest continue? Does the unrest in the riots get even worse? Like, if lethal agent and having a global pandemic, even our COVID pandemic, changed the fabric of the U.S. long term, Kyle gets to write that, and Kyle has 3 books at least where, he's got to play that out. And so does Kyle wrap this up with a bow and kind of move on and go back to America and the American military and government and intelligence apparatuses back to normal, or like new president, right? New administration is coming in. We know Alexander's out. How does he deal with this? What's next?
No, that's one of the big things that I'm really interested in terms of like world building, because as these books are standalone, to their own right, there are tidbits that are woven into each one that are appreciated by people like us who read them as a series. But you don't have to necessarily read them as a series, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how he picks up from this, the attack actually happening. They were able to turn the power back on, but like all the substations are freaking ruined, right? He overloaded all the substations, so that stuff has to get. Power's not coming back on immediately. So it'll be really interesting to see what the next step is in terms of the world that Rap is in. Does he even acknowledge it? I hope he does. I hope, we see some sort of adjust, and maybe the next villain is someone who's freaking jaded because of this, or some politician who, fought for this and thinks that the world did them wrong. I don't know. I don't know what Kyle's going to do, but or some other country is down in the dumps because America went down. Because their economy is so heavily linked to our economy.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said about what about the future generations, because we all know how extremists and fundamentalism is born. It's out of tragedy and hardship, right? And loss. Like generations that grew up with a sizable population feeling isolated, feeling hopeless. They turn towards bad influences or they turn towards extremist thought. And is that going to now, will a damaged America, be the breeding grounds for that? Like kids who grew up in cities that were rioting and looted and completely damaged, and kids who grew up hearing all of Jed Jones's rants, right? And their parents ranting and how the government screwed us and doesn't do anything for us. And is that going to create the next wave of domestic extremists? Like what does that do to the psyche of young people who are going to grow into this country? What's their idea of America, right? Like it's going to be changed radically. Like I can never even imagine. And Kyle said he wants to tackle more internal domestic affairs in the next 3 books. He wants a little arc that does track what's going on in the real America and play that out. The division in the politics, the contested elections, unrest, the public unrest, and, whether it's the racial divide he tackles, whether it's the political ideologic divide, who knows? But he's got a tough road, but also one with a whole lot of creativity to be had.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm super excited to see how it, or if the world building continues.
Yeah.
And we can, get a good follow up to this book.
Is it going to have more of like that theme you like, or the genre, the post apocalyptic genre you've mentioned that was kind of brought into this book in scenes? Is that going to continue in some of the stories? That'd be really
I hope so.
Yeah,
because we're going to get to it very quickly, but that was probably my favorite aspect of this book. So,
well, let me ask you, Chris. Let's get to our winners and losers, our zero-sum game. Let me ask you a couple of questions. I know you've got some questions for me too, but what was your favorite part about Total Power? Whether it's a favorite scene, a favorite new character, or just a general feeling about this book that you really liked. What stood out? What did it do for you?
All right, so the favorite part I loved about this book was definitely the blending in the post-apocalyptic genre with like a spy thriller, and putting Mitch into this new situation of having the attack actually happened. I thought that was great, brilliant. In terms of my favorite scene, probably would have to be like some of the action scenes in the city with Mitch, trying to rescue Sonya, or Sonya trying to escape. Just these random gang members. I really like those. Early on in the book, I also like our typical thriller action scenes with Mitch. Either at the diner or with after he's gotten shot and he's tracked down the other two terrorists in the SUV. Those are just classic Mitch Rapp scenes. But yeah, I like the new scenes. Like, we don't really see Mitch. Yeah, we see him like these third world countries, but they have the power on, and it's not like a zombie apocalypse where people are trying to go around. And definitely my favorite new character was Jed Jones. I really liked him. Although, like, I don't know if we're necessarily going to see him anymore, but I also like Sonya, who is the other pretty big new character, and I do hope we see her.
I think we have to. Sonya, she was my favorite new character. I like Jed too. I just thought Sonya was well written, and to have a Russian mole that can ingratiate herself with Scott and Mitch, like that's hard to write. That's hard to come up with that and make it believable. And it was totally believable. And part of that, the reason for it, is because my favorite scenes. Smack in the middle of the book, even after the attack happens in total chaos, I don't know why, I just can't get away from the scene in Manassas. Hanging out, everyone's together, there's food, there's drink, there's coming up with plans, there's intelligence, there's everything. There's Marcus, talking about what he does. There's a Russian sleeper agent there, for God's sakes, who is talking with them and working it out with them. And Scott's hitting on her practically, right? And Mitch is telling Scott to kill her. And like, it's just crazy. Like, I don't know what about those scenes. It felt homey. Like, I put this in one of my early reviews of the book. This book equally scared the crap out of me, where I was researching all these survivalist fringe websites, like, what do I put in a go bag? Like, what do I put in a survival kit? But at the same time, my favorite scene was very homey, eating a meal, having some lamb, and Sonya just cooked for Scott the pasta. And I'm like, that scene stood out to me more than the action. And I don't know why. The action was awesome, well written, but that scene sticks with me more than anything. I can't explain it.
I think it's like the seeing Mitch's humanity. Like, yes. That's what we like.
Yes.
Really, we're really starting to see him more in these last couple now. And yes, we've seen it all the way back to Transfer of Power, where he's trying to, he has this idea of, I'm getting out. But we like those little tidbits of him as a person, as a human being. And so that's why you cling to it. So,
yeah. Speaking of Mitch, we want those personal stories, but how'd you feel about him being out of his element? Like, Kyle wrote him behind the 8-ball with the attack happen and feeling like a failure. What do you think about seeing Rapp in those circumstances?
I thought it was great. It was a nice, like, new twist. Literally, he's pissed off in the beginning because he doesn't, he even says, like, we messed up. This is our fault. We knew this was going to happen. He can't really do anything at that moment. He's not the person to be planning how to save people's lives during this thing. He's like, literally, once you find me the guy who did this, then call me.
Yeah.
And literally, he is out of his element till almost the very end. Like, he is, like you said earlier, he's guessing, that this is going to work, that he knows is the ISIS, that they're going to do this. And then he's guessing at the very, very end that these heart rate monitors are not going to do any more damage if he sets them off. So I feel like we don't really necessarily see Mitch guessing that late into the novel. He's more so he knows what he needs to do and he's taking action. Versus, yes, he's taking action, but he's also unsure about that action.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with you. I never honestly believed Mitch Rapp might lose. And I never felt like he believed that. Like, Rapp's maybe doubted himself a few times, but it was never really doubt. Rapp knew he was getting the friggin' job done.
And he did lose this time.
He loses, and he's not
people.
sure.
I don't know how many people are going to actually die, but
Yeah.
definitely at least thousands of people have died.
Yeah. And he's not sure if he could fix it. He's not sure if he's taking a gamble in the last 100 pages of action. He's taking a gamble multiple times, and I believe that he doesn't think it'll work until the very end. He's pretty confident about the heart rate monitors, but funneling Alton and the ISIS crew into Texas and then capturing the vehicle, he's sitting there checking the watch like, what the hell are we doing here? And even when he's at the substation before the attack happens, he's like, what the hell am I doing here? This is one substation. They're going to take out a bunch. Even if I stop this one, it does nothing. That level of failure, whoa, that was a deep part of Mitch's psychology. I feel like we haven't really seen too often. Yeah.
All right, so that was some things that we liked about it. I did want to ask you one more thing. Does the scenario, or this idea, does it scare you in any way?
I mean, go back to our last Road to Total Power episodes, right?
True.
What was that? Episode 20, 21? I cannot believe the amount of vulnerabilities that Kyle got right on our power grid. And he even didn't include what some would argue is the biggest one, an EMP attack.
Right.
He went with the kinetic, physical attack on the stations and the infrastructure, and he went with the digital cyber attack with the software and the malware. And so, what happened in this book was only a 2-pronged attack, when the research very clearly says there could be a 3-prong attack, which just makes it way worse, which is hard to say, way worse than 90% of Americans potentially dying if rap doesn't save the day. And we're talking about the real world could be worse than that. I don't want to be a doomsday, predictor or anything like that, but I hope the scene in Congress, these idiot congressmen aren't writing this stuff off and are at least looking at the evidence presented, the scientific evidence, and saying, or even the intelligence presented and saying, yeah, this is real. Let's get with it. What do you think about that?
No, I totally agree. But I guess the better question I have to ask you is, well, how would you fare if this did happen?
Oh, I'm done.
Are you prepared?
Oh,
no. Are you prepared?
I'm done. I'm absolutely done. I will finish all the Aslan Brewery local brew in my fridge. I mean, what would I even have? A couple of cans, maybe, of tomato sauce. Dude,
you're making pizzas for the first couple of days.
I'm making many pizzas. Days. Yeah, I'm done, man. It's over. Not even gonna try. Not even gonna try. I'll take a frisbee. That's what I'll do. I'll toss a frisbee around in a parking lot somewhere, wait for it to end.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All right, so what are some things we didn't like about this? And me off the bat, the whole heart rate monitor plot, I didn't love. I see how it was a good device to keep Alton alive, and this is another question of did you really enjoy Alton as a villain? I thought ultimately he was a little weak, and I felt in the beginning I was like, man, he's really intelligent, he's really strong, and in the end he was so weak, and I didn't see that coming from the beginning. I thought he was going to be way stronger than what he was. We mentioned this in our last pod, how he's the perfect blend of both Hank Clark and
the professor,
or Peter Cameron. But in the end, he's more Peter Cameron than he is Hank Clark.
Yeah.
He literally transitions from Hank Clark to Peter Cameron.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Alton started out as a really strong villain, smart, quirky, this weird socially awkward thing, and it's he's one of those geniuses who knows everything and was hired by the government and has access. Who can take it all down? Here we go. But I guess because of the theme we've identified, loss of control, he did weaken, and that was part of the storyline. And I agree. The second half of the book, he didn't quite give me that frightening edge that he opened with. I guess ISIS still did in some ways, but the interplay between he and ISIS, I'll agree with you. It got a little weird, a little weak, and possibly unbelievable. Like you said, he killed, what was the general's name who took over after Halabi? Nahas, I want to say.
Oh, yeah.
He just stabs him and kills him, and I'm like, could he really do that? So you convinced me on that point. But there's something bigger that I don't know if it's just me personally, but I really like seeing Rap in the theater of war. I really prefer him not just abroad and in the Middle East. Like I think of the Yemen scenes in Lethal Agent. At least half of Lethal Agent had him in his element doing what Mitch does. And that was nice. And those action scenes were my favorite of that book. This didn't ever give me that, right? Like here it was a sober Mitch, down to reality Mitch. And while that was new and exciting to see him in that role, I wanted to see him operating in a theater of war, which doesn't fit this book at all. But for me, like when we rate these books, and I might have said this before, I can't wait to get to Mitch in Afghanistan. I cannot wait to get to Mitch right in the heart of the war on terror. And books that are a little more domestic and where he's operating at home, even like Third Option, right? That one didn't stand out to me as like a top half or top 5 of the Mitch Rapp books, simply because he was operating pretty much on domestic soil. So part of it for me is just my personal bias, but he was driving around too much. We're bouncing between West Virginia, Manassas. Oh, let's drive back to West Virginia. Oh, we're on the road. Let's drive to, let's stop at this bunker somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains. And I got a little lost and it dragged out. Our conversation kind of dragged, I felt, during those parts of the book as well. They just weren't doing it for me when Mitch was driving for here, driving there. It was just a little too scattered and drawn out in that middle third. So,
yeah, no, I could see that, and yeah, I think that besides the action at the motel and the action of Mitch, taking out people in DC, and half of that we get off, sort of off book, not off camera, but off book. Yeah, we don't have a lot of action. We have him taking the hostage on the plane. But again, it's very short action. And then again, taking the hostage down in Texas. And then we get the obligatory, interrogation scenes. But yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I guess we have to give our final rating.
Yes.
So for me, I really like this book. And I've told you why I like it. I like the apocalypse. I like the new element that Mitch was put in. So I gave it an A-. Not as good as Lethal Agent, I'm going to say. I gave it an A-, an 8.7. But yeah, no, solid book. I really liked it.
I could see that.
Yeah, that's my rating.
Yeah, I could see that. I think I'm still playing with this one in my mind. I want to get a few more books in to really land on where this one falls. Only covering this is our 6th book so far. I don't think I can put it on my whole rating list just yet, whether it's going to be towards the middle or if it will crack that top half. Yeah, I'm torn, but I could see where you're at with that A-. I would probably go a little lower than that. I would put it in the B+ range for me, only compared to, in this podcast, we mentioned Memorial Day, so I know that one's coming. I just finished up The Last Man. I'm halfway through The Survivor, so some of these classics, and we didn't even touch American Assassin and Kill Shot. So I'm just trying to put it in the context of all that and the books that work for me personally. And so, yeah, I'm probably going to put it at about that B range.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do a pod where we
recalibrate.
At least 10 books in, we sort of think about everything, as a whole. But
yeah,
solid book. It's also hard to rate fresh books, that just come out. There's not a lot of discourse. We are the first discourse about them. So, at least with Lethal Agent, we had a lot of things that we could read online, a lot of reviews to read. This, very fresh. So,
and Lethal Agent, we had a year for it to sink in, if you will.
Right.
This one,
exactly.
This one, I think, is going to age very well.
Sure.
Especially depending on what happens in current events and how things play out. I think this one will age well, for sure.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, the last thing, we have to wrap up with, we always do our cover poll. Which cover was the audience's favorite and our favorite? Well, in this case, we only have one cover, and I am grateful for that because, man, this one nailed it.
I really like this cover.
If we're talking about covers to Emily Bessler and crew and everyone else at Simon & Schuster, this is the perfect package. Once you look at this one in hardcover with this nice shine on it, the depth of the dark blue compared to the liveliness, how vivid the electric blue is in the bottom left, you can watch that presidential seal just disappear into oblivion as it goes from being in the bright hues to the darker hues. And great cover, especially in the hardcover edition.
I thought it would be a fun exercise, since we don't have alternative covers, to both me and you, Mike, to come up ourselves with some alternative book covers. And for me, you got to have some sort of random guy, supposedly Mitch Rapp, running through, I don't know, some random thing. So
the power lines would have worked here. The random power lines.
Things that I thought of. Yes, things that I thought of. If we want to have something that actually works, we could have power lines. We could have, DC, things that don't work, running on the mall.
Union Station.
Running through Union Station, running through the Capitol building, with the power off.
Oh wait, all those have been done in books that it doesn't relate to, so who knows?
One thing I really thought that would be cool, that wouldn't give away like too much of the book, could be to have like the whole diner scene. Like you could have Mitch in a crosshair running across while like two people are shooting at him from a diner, and then you could also while having like this loss of light, or like some sort of light shattering, or try to bring in the power thing. But yeah, those are my ideas.
I like the diner scene. If we're gonna put Mitch in a random place on a cover like all the other books did, a diner would make sense in the mountains for that one scene. Those are pretty good. I'm thinking a flag somehow. I think playing with light and dark on the presidential seal here is really good, but
yeah, I like that.
I wonder if there was somehow a flag worked in instead of the seal. Still the light and dark, different blue hues of blue, but I'm wondering like a draped flag, but you don't see the stars, up in the field because that's all blacked out or something as it fades into oblivion. Something like that could have worked for me.
Yeah, I like that abstract. That's nice.
But then again, knowing that these are completely random, it should just be a guy sitting in McDonald's somewhere and someone flips a switch and turns the lights off. Because that's what they like going for. Just put a random dude with a gun in a scene that has nothing to do with the book. You can have Mitch on a boat, right? Like that'd be perfect for this. Mitch on a boat, because why not? He's never on a boat in the book. Perfect. Let's put it on the cover in 2 years.
Hey, down the road, there's going to be like crosshairs on like a substation or something like that.
I mean,
well, that makes sense.
Too much detail. Like, would people know it's like a power electric? Maybe something with fire because of the wildfires that they try to start.
Because the fires. Yeah. I don't know. These last two books really, their initial covers were very good. The Lethal Agent with the little
map.
Infections coming up through Mexico, and this one, The Light in the Dark. I really like them. They did a good job with this, so hats off to them.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, that's Total Power. That was awesome.
That was good.
Glad we could finally talk to you guys about that.
Yes, indeed. And thank you, Kyle, for giving us this gem.
Yes.
So, Chris, what are we covering on our next episode?
Right. So, be on the lookout for our next episode following Monday. We're not quite sure what we're going to do. We have a couple interviews, a couple of cool things in the works. We need to decide what we're going to actually publish, but we promise you it will be exciting. So, yeah, be on the lookout for that. Again, at the end of every episode, we need to thank our patrons who make this podcast possible, including our special operator, Sherry F. Also, our special agents. We have Matt, James, Roman, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, and Jeff. Yeah, without you guys, we wouldn't be here. And please, 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 please subscribe, rate, and review us using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us online at mitrappod.com or using our Twitter handle at mitrappod or on Instagram at mitrappod. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.